The Talon believed they were smarter than any race in the galaxy. Their pride was based on millennia of conquest and technological superiority. When they identified Earth, a planet classified as a death world, by galactic standards, they saw only an untapped gold mine. To them, humans were primitive creatures, dangerous only because of the hostile environment they lived in. But the Talon had no fear. They had infiltrated and exploited far more advanced civilizations before. The Talon arrived on Earth silently, their ship's cloaking systems perfectly calibrated to avoid detection by any human technology. They landed in a dense forest, far from human settlements, confident that no one would notice. A light rain fell, the thick foliage muffling their steps as they moved through the undergrowth. Earth felt wild, unrefined, exactly as they expected. The Talon team of 6 advanced through the woods toward their target, a high-security military facility where humans kept some of their most advanced technology. Their mission was simple: steal whatever they could, reverse engineer it, and leave before the humans even knew they were there. The Talon had done this dozens of times on other planets, but this mission felt even easier. They reached the facility's perimeter, hidden in the shadows of the trees. The security looked laughably weak to them. Cameras, motion sensors, guards patrolling in predictable patterns, child's play. One of the Talon, the most skilled with their infiltration tools, disabled the sensors with a few quick adjustments. Another took down the cameras with a specialized EMP device. Within minutes, they had breached the outer defenses without setting off a single alarm. Inside, the facility was quiet, almost peaceful. The humans were clearly not expecting any threats. The Talon moved swiftly, their silent footsteps echoing faintly off the concrete walls. They found the tech vault within minutes, a heavily secured room containing Earth's most advanced equipment. They hacked into the vault's control panel with ease. Inside, they found rows of strange, sleek devices, human technology, far more advanced than they'd imagined. The Talon gathered as much as they could carry. One of them, an expert in alien engineering, marveled at the designs, even though they didn't fully understand the functions yet. No matter, they thought. Once back on their ship, they could study it in detail. As they exited the facility, however, a slight unease settled over the group. The rain had stopped, but the air felt heavy, charged with something they couldn't identify. One of them glanced at the sky. The stars were visible, but there was something different about them tonight, something off. They dismissed it as an overactive imagination. After all, humans couldn't even detect their presence, let alone cause them any harm. The Talon made their way back to the ship, still cloaked and hidden deep in the forest. As they entered, one of them started running diagnostics, preparing for a quick departure. But something wasn't right. The ship's systems were showing minor malfunctions, small, almost imperceptible, but there. The navigation system flickered for a moment before stabilizing. The engines took a few extra seconds to power up. A mild annoyance, nothing more. They lifted off, rising through the atmosphere. The ship moved smoothly at first, cutting through the clouds with ease. But as they reached the upper layers of Earth's atmosphere, turbulence hit them hard. The ship shook violently, tossed by winds far stronger than they'd expected. One of the Talon was thrown against a wall, their breath knocked out of them. "Stabilize the ship," the leader commanded, their voice tight with frustration. "I'm trying," the pilot replied, their hands flying across the controls. "This shouldn't be happening. The atmospheric conditions weren't this severe when we landed." As they fought to regain control, the ship's systems began to flicker again. Lights dimmed, consoles flashed with error messages. It wasn't enough to bring the ship down, but it was enough to keep them on edge. The leader frowned, an unsettling thought crossing their mind. Was this really just atmospheric turbulence, or was something else at play? They managed to break through the atmosphere, but as soon as they reached the safety of space, another malfunction occurred. The ship's navigation system went offline for a few seconds before rebooting. This time, it wasn't just a minor issue. They had lost communication with their homeworld. "What's going on?" the leader demanded. "I don't know," the technician replied, their voice tense. "It's like something's interfering with our systems, But there's no sign of human technology nearby that could do this. Run diagnostics again, the leader ordered. Find out what's wrong. We can't leave without communication. As the crew scrambled to regain control, the leader began to feel a gnawing sense of unease. Earth had always been known for its dangerous environment, but they had prepared for that. What they hadn't prepared for was the possibility that humans might have systems in place to counter them. Could the humans have known they were coming? No, that was impossible. They had been too careful, too precise. The humans couldn't have detected them. This had to be a coincidence, a malfunction. But the thought lingered in the back of the leader's mind, growing stronger with each passing minute. Suddenly, the ship's sensors picked up something, a signal, faint but clear. It was coming from the surface of Earth. The crew stared at the screen in confusion. There were no human ships in orbit, no satellites capable of sending such a signal to them. "What is that?" one of the crew members asked, their voice barely above a whisper. "It's a signal," the technician said, frowning at the screen. "But it's not like anything we've seen before. It's not a communication from humans. It's something else." The leader clenched their jaw. "Ignore it. Focus on getting the ship's systems back online. We need to leave now." But even as the technician worked to repair the ship, the signal grew stronger. It wasn't just interference. It was as if the planet itself was reaching out to them, a force they couldn't understand. The crew felt it now, the invisible weight pressing down on them, as if Earth itself was warning them. And for the first time since they arrived, the Talon felt fear. As the Talon ship soared away from Earth's surface, the crew remained tense, the strange signal from the planet still resonating faintly in their systems. They had disabled it, or so they thought. Diagnostics ran over and over, but the source of the interference eluded them. Whatever had gone wrong with their systems seemed to be more than just a minor issue. It was growing, spreading through the ship's systems like a virus. "We need to figure this out now," the leader commanded, their voice sharp. "I don't want any surprises." The technician was already hard at work, hands flying over the controls as they tried to isolate the problem. But every attempt to stabilize the ship's systems only seemed to make things worse. The navigation was erratic, the engines were fluctuating between power levels, and even basic life support systems were showing signs of instability. "This shouldn't be possible," the technician muttered, frustration growing as they struggled to make sense of the data in front of them. "Our systems are far more advanced than anything the humans could throw at us." The rest of the crew remained silent, each of them feeling the weight of the growing unease. They had expected a simple, straightforward mission. Steal the tech, study it, and return victorious. But now, it felt like they were trapped in a situation they couldn't control. And the strangest part was that it didn't seem like any direct human action was involved. The humans hadn't even fired a shot, yet the Talon ship was falling apart from the inside. Just then, the lights flickered again. A low hum reverberated through the ship as the engines began to stall. The pilot cursed under their breath, gripping the controls tighter. "I can't maintain altitude," the pilot said through clenched teeth. "We're losing power." Panic started to settle in among the crew. The leader, always composed, felt a cold sweat forming on their forehead. They were still too close to Earth to safely warp out, and they knew they couldn't survive a crash landing back on the planet. The harsh, unpredictable nature of Earth was one thing, but their ship, a vessel built with the finest Talon technology, should not be failing like this. The technician slammed a fist against the console. "It's like something is in our systems, but I can't find the source." The leader took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Are the humans tracking us? Could they have planted something when we took the tech?" "No," the technician replied, shaking their head. "We scanned everything. There's no evidence of human tampering. It's like Earth itself is doing this." The words hung in the air for a moment, and the leader immediately dismissed the thought. It was ridiculous. Earth wasn't sentient, it wasn't alive in any meaningful sense. But the way things were going, it felt as if the planet was refusing to let them go, as if it had its own defenses beyond what they could understand. The ship jerked violently to one side, sending 2 of the crew members tumbling into the walls. The pilot struggled to keep control, but the ship was veering off course, drawn back toward the planet. As they descended, clouds began to swirl ominously beneath them, the atmosphere churning with turbulence. One of the crew members cried out, "We're going to crash if we can't get this under control." The leader's mind raced as they considered their options. They were losing altitude fast, and the planet's gravitational pull seemed stronger than it should have been. The interference, whatever it was, had infected every system they relied on, turning their once state-of-the-art ship into a death trap. "Emergency landing protocols," the leader ordered. "Find a place to land. Now!" The pilot nodded, struggling to stabilize their descent. As the ship entered the lower atmosphere, the turbulence only got worse. Lightning flashed in the distance, striking dangerously close to the ship. The winds howled, shaking the vessel like a toy in a storm. The planet, hostile and unforgiving, seemed intent on punishing their intrusion. Finally, they spotted a clearing. The pilot guided the ship down, fighting the controls every step of the way. The landing was rough. The ship hit the ground with a bone-jarring thud, skidding across the landscape before coming to a stop in a cloud of dust and debris. The crew was shaken, but alive. For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the heavy breathing of the crew. The ship was damaged but not beyond repair, at least not yet. The leader stood, trying to regain control of the situation. "Everyone, check your stations. We need to figure out how badly we've been hit." But as the crew started to assess the damage, it became clear that they were far worse off than they'd realized. The systems that hadn't already failed were on the verge of collapse. Power was fluctuating, life support was hanging by a thread, and their communication systems were completely offline. They were stranded, cut off from their homeworld. "We need to make repairs," the technician said, though their voice was tinged with doubt. "But I don't know how much we can do with the tools we have." The leader nodded grimly. "Do what you can. We need to get out of here before the humans track us down." But even as they said it, they knew something wasn't right. The humans hadn't done anything. They hadn't even shown up. It was as if Earth itself was rejecting their presence. Hours passed, and the repairs moved slowly. Every attempt to fix the ship's systems seemed to uncover new problems. The crew grew more and more frustrated, their nerves fraying as they tried to make sense of what was happening. Outside the ship, the environment remained eerily calm. No predators, no human response teams, just the oppressive, heavy air, as if the planet was watching them, waiting. Finally, one of the crew members spoke up. "I don't think we're getting off this planet." The leader shot them a sharp look. "We're not giving up." But deep down, the leader wasn't so sure. They had underestimated Earth. What they thought was a simple theft had turned into a slow, creeping nightmare. And the worst part was that they still didn't know why. The humans hadn't even needed to lift a finger. Earth was doing all the work for them. As they continued their desperate attempts to repair the ship, the sense of unease only grew. It was as if they were being hunted, not by humans, but by the planet itself. Something far more ancient and powerful than they had ever imagined. And for the first time, they wondered if they would ever leave Earth alive. The Talon crew had been working tirelessly to fix the ship, but every step forward was followed by 2 steps back. The damage was far worse than they anticipated. They had been stranded for hours, and the atmosphere inside the ship grew thick with frustration. The leader paced near the control deck, watching as their crew struggled to stabilize systems that were refusing to respond. "How is this possible?" one of the crew members asked, hands trembling as they tapped at a console that refused to reboot. "We've handled far worse situations than this. Earth is nothing compared to what we've faced before." The leader said nothing. They had no answer. Earth, a planet they had barely considered a threat, was turning out to be their undoing. Every attempt to re-establish communications with their homeworld had failed. Every diagnostic revealed more failures, more breakdowns. And it wasn't just the ship. The crew could feel something was wrong. The planet felt like it was watching them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The technician, who had been at the controls since they landed, looked up. It's not just the atmosphere or the ship. Something's interfering with everything we do. The leader's jaw clenched. Explain. The technician took a breath, tapping at the console again. There's something here. It's everywhere. In the systems, in the ship, like a virus, but it's not a virus. It's like the planet itself is. Enough with that nonsense, the leader snapped. You're suggesting Earth is intelligent? That it's attacking us directly? I don't know, the technician replied, frustration clear in their voice. But it's the only thing that makes sense. Every time we try to fix something, another system goes down. It's not random. It's precise. It's methodical. The leader didn't respond immediately. They could feel the weight of the technician's words pressing down on them, but they couldn't allow themselves to believe that a planet could fight back like this. Earth was a death world, yes, but it wasn't supposed to be capable of something this. Outside, the wind began to pick up, a low howl reverberating through the damaged hull. The crew exchanged uneasy glances as the ship creaked and groaned under the strain. The storm had come out of nowhere, as if the planet was responding to their presence, growing more hostile with each passing moment. We need to prepare for the worst, the pilot muttered. If this storm gets any worse, we might not survive the night. The leader ignored the comment. Their mind was racing. They had planned for every possible scenario, and none of those scenarios had included being hunted by the very environment they were trying to escape. The ship had been their safety net, their ticket off this planet, and now it felt like a prison. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the ship as one of the systems sparked, shorting out completely. The technician swore, rushing over to the panel. But it was no use. Another system gone. We're losing power, the technician said, voice shaking now. Life support's next. How long do we have? The leader asked, keeping their voice steady. Hours. Maybe less. A heavy silence fell over the crew. The leader knew what they were thinking. It was the same thought gnawing at the back of their mind. They had underestimated Earth. They had thought they were untouchable, but now the planet was breaking them down piece by piece. The leader had to make a decision, and fast. We can't stay here, the leader finally said. We need to find shelter outside the ship. If life support goes down, we won't last. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Leaving the ship meant exposing themselves to Earth's unpredictable environment. But staying meant certain death. They all knew it. Do we even know what's out there? One of the crew members asked, fear evident in their voice. No, the leader admitted. But it's better than suffocating in here. They gathered what they could, portable oxygen, weapons, survival gear, and prepared to leave the ship. As they stepped outside, the first thing they noticed was the silence. The wind had died down, leaving an eerie stillness in its place. The forest around them was dark, shadows stretching in every direction, as if the planet was holding its breath. They moved cautiously, keeping their weapons ready. Every sound, every movement in the trees sent a shiver down their spines. The sense that they were being watched was stronger than ever now, pressing down on them with an almost tangible weight. Suddenly, one of the crew members stopped, eyes wide. Did you hear that? The rest of the crew froze, straining to listen. At first, there was nothing. But then, faintly, they heard it, a rustling in the trees, low and rhythmic, as if something was moving through the forest, watching them from the darkness. Stay together, the leader ordered, voice low but firm. We don't know what's out here. They continued forward, moving deeper into the woods. But the further they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and the trees seemed to close in around them, like the planet was pushing them towards something, guiding them. And then it happened. Without warning, one of the crew members screamed, their voice cut short as they were dragged into the darkness. The others barely had time to react before another was snatched away, disappearing into the shadows. Fire! The leader shouted, raising their weapon and firing blindly into the trees. The others followed suit, but it was no use. Whatever was hunting them was too fast, too precise. They couldn't see it, couldn't hear it, only feel its presence closing in on them. Another scream. Another crewmate gone. The leader's heart pounded in their chest. They had faced countless dangers across the galaxy, but nothing like this. Nothing that felt so alive. "We need to fall back," the technician shouted, eyes wide with terror. "We can't fight this." But it was too late. The forest was alive, moving around them, hurting them like prey. And one by one, the crew fell, dragged into the darkness by unseen forces. The leader fought to stay calm, but their mind was racing. This wasn't just the planet. This was something else, something far more dangerous than they could have ever anticipated. The humans hadn't needed to lift a finger. Earth was doing the work for them. As the last of the crew disappeared into the shadows, the leader realized the terrible truth. Earth wasn't just a death world. It was a predator. And they had walked right into its trap. The leader stumbled through the dense forest, alone now. The sounds of their crew being dragged into the darkness still echoed in their ears. Panic gnawed at the edges of their mind, but they forced themselves to focus. They couldn't afford to give in to fear. Not yet. Each step felt heavier, the weight of their situation pressing down like a vice. The darkness around them seemed alive, shifting and closing in with every movement. The trees loomed overhead, twisted and gnarled, blocking out the sky. It was as though the planet was swallowing them whole. Their breathing was ragged, every intake of air sharp and cold. The oxygen pack on their back was nearly depleted, and they knew they didn't have much time left. Their eyes darted around, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement, but it was useless. Whatever had taken the rest of the crew was still out there, waiting. The leader's mind raced. How had this gone so wrong? They had planned everything perfectly, accounted for every variable. But the planet had been the one thing they couldn't predict. Earth wasn't just dangerous. It was something far more insidious. And now, it was toying with them. A sound in the distance, a faint rustle, barely perceptible, snapped the leader out of their thoughts. They froze, gripping their weapon tightly, heart pounding in their chest. The forest was quiet again, too quiet. Every instinct screamed at them to run, but they knew there was no point. Running hadn't saved the others, and it wouldn't save them now. But they had to try something. Standing still meant waiting for whatever was out there to finish the job. They moved quickly, staying low, every muscle tensed. Each step was careful, calculated, avoiding any unnecessary noise. The leader knew they couldn't fight whatever was out there head-on. Their only chance was to outthink it, to use the one thing humans had always feared about this planet, its unpredictability. Maybe they could turn it against their pursuer. As they made their way through the forest, a strange realization began to settle in. The forest wasn't just alive, it was guiding them. Each path they took seemed to lead somewhere, as if the planet itself was shaping their journey. It was an unsettling thought, one that made their stomach turn. But they couldn't ignore it any longer. Earth was intelligent, far more than they had ever realized. The leader pushed through the dense undergrowth, sweat dripping down their face. Every breath was harder to take now, the oxygen pack running dangerously low. They couldn't afford to stop. Not yet. They had to find a way off this planet, even if it meant risking everything. The thought of returning to their ship, damaged and useless, seemed almost laughable now. The planet had taken everything from them, and now it wanted the last of their strength. Then, through the trees, they saw something. A light. It flickered faintly, just beyond a small ridge. Hope flared briefly in the leader's chest. Maybe it was human technology, maybe it was a beacon of some kind. If they could reach it, maybe they could still send a signal, call for help. Anything. They hurried toward the light, ignoring the sharp branches that tore at their skin. The ridge was steeper than they expected, and it took everything they had left to scramble up it. But as they reached the top and looked down, what they saw froze them in place. It wasn't a beacon. It wasn't human at all. Below them, in the clearing, stood a massive structure, something ancient and alien. It pulsed with a faint, eerie glow, casting long shadows across the ground. The leader stared in disbelief. This was no human installation. It was something far older, something the Talon had never encountered before. The realization hit them like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just Earth's doing. There was something here, buried deep within the planet, something that had been waiting for them. And now, it had finally woken up. The leader took a step back, their mind racing. Whatever this structure was, it was the source of everything that had gone wrong. The malfunctions, the strange interference, the way the planet itself seemed to be alive, it all led back to this place. But they had no idea how to stop it. No idea if it even could be stopped. A low hum began to fill the air, growing louder with each passing second. The ground beneath their feet trembled, as if the planet was reacting to their presence. The leader's heart pounded in their chest. They had to make a decision, and fast. With no other options, they descended into the clearing, moving cautiously toward the structure. The air around it was thick, heavy with an energy they couldn't explain. As they drew closer, they noticed strange markings on the surface, symbols that seemed to shift and change the longer they looked at them. Their minds screamed at them to turn back, to run, but there was no going back now. Whatever this thing was, it held the answers they needed. It was the key to understanding what had happened, to figuring out why Earth had become their enemy. As they reached the base of the structure, the hum grew louder, almost deafening. The leader hesitated for a moment, then reached out, placing a hand on the surface. Instantly, a shockwave of energy rippled through them, knocking them back. They hit the ground hard, gasping for breath, but the shockwave had done more than just push them away. For a brief moment, the leader saw everything. Images flashed before their eyes, visions of ancient civilizations, long gone, wiped out by the same force that had taken hold of Earth. This planet had been chosen, long ago, as a prison, a containment field for something far worse than anything the galaxy had ever seen. And now, the Talon had unleashed it. The leaders struggled to their feet, heart racing. They couldn't stay here. They had to get out, had to warn someone, anyone, about what they had discovered. But as they turned to leave, the ground beneath them cracked, splitting open with a deafening roar. The leader stumbled, trying to regain their footing, but it was too late. The planet was tearing itself apart, reacting to the disturbance they had caused. The ground gave way beneath them, and they fell into the darkness below, their final thought a chilling realization. Earth had never needed protection from invaders. It had been protecting the galaxy from what lay within. And now, the Talon had doomed them all.